What is your most expensive mistake? Freshman year of college, I thought my final exam was at 11:30. It was 9:30. The exam was 40% of my grade, so I failed. I lost my scholarship and had to pay to retake the class. Don't you just love colleges and how not scammy they are? Not doing more research into hiring a roofing contractor. I paid $13,000 for the crappiest job ever. Flashing messed up, rotten sheathing not replaced, nails blown clear through the shingles, reusing shingles when they started running low, water running behind my siding, no flashing around my chimney. It was a crap show. They didn't even clean up. They left the old roof and nails strewn across my backyard and lawn. I pushed and pushed, and the next thing I know, he's disappeared and I have water running into my house. My insurance guy refused to help, and I had to hire an honest roofer and redo the entire job for another $13K. The second guy cut me a break since he knew I was in a bad spot. Last I heard, that guy was banned from doing work for a few insurance companies, but he changes his name and moves to another city or state often. He would take the money, hire random migrant crews, but not give them enough for materials, and demand the jobs be done in one day. Yeah, I don't really understand how, freelancing contractors can get away with just doing this kind of thing. What other industry can you just completely botch a job, take all of the money, and just run away with it and just not be prosecuted for it? Taking out a $5,000 loan to help my mom with her very past due bills. Long story short, she ends up missing bills again and not learning her lesson. Yeah, that's why when you meet somebody who is in a whole bunch of unreasonable debt, you don't say, hey, I want to join in on that. Not taking diabetes seriously cost me the vision in my right eye. I think diabetes is just the most bizarre condition. It's like, oh, you ate too much junk food, now your leg just fell off. Agreeing to not have the septic tank inspected before closing on our home. It was pumped recently, so it must be fine, right? Turns out it was actually in bad shape and needed to be fully replaced. Over $20,000. Yeah, that's one of the worst parts about when you're house shopping. You're like, ooh, this one's cheap. I hope they're not hiding anything about it. My father died in 2007 and left me and my sister $115,000 each. I used it to buy a new house. I was 25 at the time, didn't know crap about the process to buy a home, so needless to say I bought something I couldn't afford. Then the market crashed in 2008. I lost the house and my inheritance. I was more upset about blowing my father's savings than losing the house. Lesson learned. Yeah, I kind of feel like we're going to be seeing another pretty massive market crash coming up here soon, and I don't even really know how to prepare for it. When I was 7, I went into a AAA office with my dad because I wanted to see what it was like inside. I often brought my Dora coin purse with me, and inside I had $5 in ones. I didn't understand what they were saying during the meeting, so I just folded my allowance over and over to pass the time. After what seemed like hours, I got bored and decided to drop them on the floor, and tell my dad I found them lying there. I guess I expected him to be like, wow, that's amazing, you're so great for finding that, sweetie, or whatever. I don't know, I was 7. But when I point them out to tell them that I found $5 on the carpet, he scolds me for trying to steal and makes me hand the money to the broker along with an apology. That stupid lady knew for sure that money wasn't hers. The world felt gray in the entire car ride home and continued the following weeks after that. I lost my dignity, my soul, my happiness, my innocence, and $5. I think about it every night, and it keeps me awake in a cool sweat. Man, this one's probably the most tragic of them all. Losing my USB that had 50 Bitcoin on it. It was a prize for getting second in the Guitar Hero contest hosted by the university I was attending. Oh, well, I don't mean to brag, but if anybody wants to give me some Bitcoin for playing Guitar Hero, I'm pretty good at it. My most recent was going to the doctor. Went for a PAP smear, asked 4 questions relating to my birth control and the vagina since I was seeing the gyno that day. Received a $413 bill because the 4 questions I asked were deemed outside the scope for the appointment. Over $100 per question. See, crap like this is one of the biggest reasons why people just avoid going to the doctor. If people are feeling like there's something kind of wrong with them, they're much more likely to just shrug it off. Because they're like, well, if it's nothing, I don't want to go waste a ton of money by going into the office. Same thing goes for pets too. I took Faye to the vet once in the first year I had her because her eye was leaking. And I showed up and they're like, well, she's not doing it now. Here's some ointment to put on it. And they charged me $100 for that. I lent an ex $5,000. Never saw him or the money again. Well, yeah, you know what happens when you give your ex money? It becomes your ex money. I rushed into buying a car. Bought a salvaged vehicle that looked like it was in great shape. It drove fine and it was exactly what I needed at the time. About a month in, some frame damage was discovered that made it harder to steer. And there were no freaking airbags. I tried to turn around and sell it once I found out, but I couldn't in good conscience sell an unsafe vehicle to anyone. So I paid $7,000 to install new airbags and have a few other things done. Once the car was safe, I felt like I could stick with it a little longer. Then the transmission started leaking. I had grown attached to the car by this time, so I figured I'd at least get an estimate on fixing the leak, even if it meant dropping the transmission. The mechanic gave me a call moments after I dropped it off to tell me he was worried that if he dropped the transmission, he wouldn't be able to put my car back together, because the repairs of the car were so bad that the transmission was essentially holding the whole front end together. I sold it for scrap and basically lost $15,000 total on that terrible purchase. See, if I had to tell about my worst financial mistake, it would be very similar to this one. Yeah, back when I was like 20 years old, I was like, oh, I want to buy myself a car. I only want to spend like $1,500, so of course I went to a dealership and bought one for like $2,200. I drove it for about 3 months, way overpaying for insurance. I got like 3 flat tires in that time. And then one day the car comes to a stop and starts smoking out the engine, and then turns out the head gasket got blown. And then I take it in to get it repaired, and they're like, yeah, it'll be about $4,000. And I'm like, no, I'm getting rid of this thing. So I sold it back to the dealership that I bought it from, but for like $800, just barely enough to pay off my loan. So I got rid of it. I was completely broke afterwards, and I had no car. But man, I will always remember that blown head gasket day. It took me like 8 hours just to get home. Unemployed in New York City for 3 months, paying $4,000 a month in rent. Oh man, I can't even fathom why anyone would want to live in New York City. I bought a boat for almost no money, and now I'm broke. Yeah, what's the old saying? Like, the only 2 good days of buying a boat is the day you buy it and the day you sell it. I left my laptop on the front counter of my work while going into another room. We're in a major homeless area. Came back 15 minutes later, and mine and the receptionist's laptops were stolen. Fairly decent laptop, but more than the actual equipment, I lost 10 years of work. Scripts and plays, databases, artwork, and hundreds upon hundreds of lesson plans. I now back up to the cloud all the time. See, that's what's so crazy to me about people who just lose their phones or their phones break. Luckily, I've never actually completely lost a phone. I've had them get completely destroyed, but I've always been able to get the data off of it. I worked for UPS for a season. I failed to get a signature for a package containing a firearm at a home where I was aware the owner bought and sold guns. The package goes missing, crimes get committed, ATF gets involved. I wish I knew the theoretical price tag on that mistake, other than never being able to work for that company again. Yeah, it kinda sucks though. It's like somebody else commits a crime and it becomes your fault. It's a toss-up between my last marriage and the time I ran my boss's $3.5 million yacht aground on a submerged sandbar on the intracoastal waterway south of Charleston, South Carolina. Well, now I'm kind of terrified of what your marriage looked like if it was on par with a $3.5 million crash. I'll take care of this one, since it occurred less than 24 hours ago. Drinking with friends after a wedding. My girlfriend and I are staying with my best friend in his little office area as we are out of town. I get really drunk from taking too many shots and pounding beers. I lay down, struggle not to throw up, and end up passing out. I wake up by my girlfriend's scream. I look and see myself pissing all over the corner of his wall, which holds his gaming PC. So there it is. I hate my life, and the shame I hold has no bounds. He was surprisingly okay about it, and incredibly nice. I'm not sure how he hasn't stabbed me. Well, I hope that PC case didn't have too many vents on it. Back in June, I went to Africa for charity work and got sick drinking from a private well. I've been in hospitals for 4 months now, and because most of that time my health insurance didn't cover me outside of the country, I owe the government $170,000 for covering my hospital stays in the Congo and Kenya. I can't leave the United States until I pay it off, but I'm already disabled from a car wreck a decade ago. I don't know what I'm gonna do. Wait, so we not only get ripped off from healthcare here, but even if you go to some crappy hospital out in the middle of Africa, you're still gonna be charged US prices for that? Geez, maybe everybody just needs to learn first aid on themselves, and we could just never have to go to doctors. My wedding. I wanted to get married by Elvis in Las Vegas, just the 2 of us, but my fiancé had visions of wearing a white tie and tails. I was insecure and just went along with it, and the entire evening was so stressful, and one of the worst nights of my life because I was so worried about what everyone thought and if they were having a good time. It's been 23 years and I can't bring myself to even look at the pictures. We're happily married now, but the wedding was just a colossal waste of money. Yeah, I've felt that about a lot of just crazy splurges people do in Las Vegas. I mean, you don't have to throw away money just because they will accept it. I got a DUI, had to take a class to get my license back. Girl in the class needed a ride home, started flirting and asked her out. Fast forward 15 years and we're now married with 2 kids, worth every cent. Oh, so that's where you go to meet girls. Looks like I need to go back to driving school. Bachelor's in anthropology, minor in music. I mean, do people not know that the internet is a thing and you could just use it for free and learn lots of interesting stuff? I mean, if you're gonna spend all this money learning stuff that's never gonna make you money, I mean, who needs a degree for that? I didn't know how to use my direct investing feature on my bank. I was looking to invest a few $1,000s in Apple stock back in 2015. The 24/7 guy who entered the broker line could have placed the trade for me, but said I'd pay less fees if I did it myself online. I said, no, that's fine. I don't know how to use the website. Please place the trade. He said he'd have to change a small commission. I said that's fine, but he kept saying, no, you'll pay too much, and encouraged me to figure out how to do it online. I couldn't figure it out. It's worth like 500% of what I would have bought it for. Yeah, I guess I have a kind of similar story to this one too. I mean, back in around 2017, I was on some online forum and everyone was talking about buying Dogecoin, and I was like, maybe I'll drop 20 bucks on it. But I just couldn't really figure out how to use all of these weird sites. I mean, you gotta remember, everyone thinks, oh, I should have bought Bitcoin back in 2010. But it's it wasn't that easy to buy it. I mean, you didn't just have sites like Coinbase or Binance that just made it super easy. It was kind of a sketchy process to wire money and stuff for that. And so yeah, I probably missed out on thousands of dollars worth of Dogecoin from that. I bought an old, overpriced Ford Bronco. That thing hated me with a passion. Each time I would try to drive it, it didn't want to work, or worked for 10 minutes and then pretended to die. I think he had something against women because all the men who tried said it worked like a charm. Sold it for half what I paid for it. I hope it's rusting in a field somewhere. Well, these were all fun stories to learn about horrible things people have been through, and you get to learn from them. You don't have to make the same mistakes they did. I mean, pretty much the one thing I've learned just over the past 9 or 10 years of being an adult is that anytime you're going to make a big purchase, anything more than a couple $100s, you should invest a lot of time just researching that thing and making sure that you are buying the right thing and it's not going to be a regrettable decision. And definitely try to avoid large amounts of debt at all costs. But at least I've been completely debt-free for the past couple years, and I'm doing just fine, so I'll see you next week.